Welcome to a meeting of your Planning Commission, the official local planning agency for the cities of Tampa, Temple Terrace, Plant City, and unincorporated Hillsborough County. The Planning Commission provides innovative leadership and long-range vision that contributes to the creation of a thriving, prosperous community that offers opportunity, fairness, and choice in how we live, move, learn, work, and play. For more information about the Planning Commission, please call 813-272-5940. Follow us on social media or visit our website at planhillsborough.org.
Good evening and welcome to the April 7th, 2025 public hearing of the Planning Commission on City of Plant City Comprehensive Plan Amendments. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation are encouraged. For those attending in person and wishing to speak on any agenda item, please sign the register at the rear of the room and turn off any devices that may be a distraction. To minimize feedback in the audio, all online participants in the meeting will be muted until it is their opportunity to speak. Planning commissioners should unmute themselves to indicate that they would like to speak. Please be sure to state your name at the beginning of your remarks for the benefit of the clerk. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments. When your name is called, you will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Please wait until the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and adhere to the time limits. If anyone has difficulties or is watching via HTV and would like to provide comments to be included in the record for the local government hearing, please email them to planner@plancom.org. For those of you who are not familiar with our process, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following presentations, members of the public may address the Planning Commission when recognized by the chairman. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal or response. Planning commissioners will then ask questions. Public comment will be closed. Then upon a motion, a second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. To all participants, please note that tonight's hearing concerns proposed changes to the comprehensive plan. Presentations should not include matters related to zoning applications and site plans that are not before the commission. Zoning conditions are not relevant to plan amendments and may not be considered by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's purview in making a recommendation is limited to consistency or inconsistency with the comprehensive plan. And with that, I'd like to ask the clerk to please go ahead and call roll.
Good evening. Bowden?
Here.
Buzza? Cardenas? Kona?
Here.
Kress? Linkus? Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Lauk?
Here.
Saria?
Here.
Sieben? Orton?
Here.
Rodriguez?
Here.
Chair Joseph.
Here.
You have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. Our first and only agenda item for tonight is 2A PCCPA 24-11, Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, north of Trapnell Road and west of Timberlane Drive, and the presenter is Krista Kelly.
Does not want to open. Okay. Clicking on it. Oh, there it is. It came. Good evening, Krista Kelly, Planning Commission staff. This evening I'm presenting PCCPA 2411. This is a site located on the north side of Trapnell Road, west of Timberland Drive. This is a privately initiated future land use map amendment. It's approximately 14 acres in size. Concurrently, the applicant is requesting a voluntary annexation. The applicant's requesting a change from Hillsborough County Residential 1 to Plant City Residential 6. This is a location map showing the site located in the southwestern portion of Plant City. Again, it's on the north side of Trapnell Road. It is east of Turkey Creek Road and west of Timber Lane Road, which is an internal road to Walden Lakes. This is an aerial view of the site outlined in pink. As you can see, it's used for agricultural purposes currently, developed with a single-family home and some accessory buildings. To the east and north, you see Walden Lakes, which is a large planned development built out with approximately quarter-acre lots. To the west and south, you see homes in a rural development pattern with homes on large lots. This is a street view looking at the site from Trapnell Road. This is the home site I pointed out. This is looking west down Trapnell Road. This is looking at Timber Lane Road in Walden Lakes, the entryway to the subdivision. And this is looking south on the south side of Trapnell Road from the subject site. This is the adopted future land use map showing the map currently designated Hillsborough County Residential 1. This is a rural land use category intended for rural communities and also agricultural uses. As you see outside the city limits, which is delineated by the blue dotted line surrounding this bright yellow area, the area is predominantly residential 1. Inside the city limits, you'll see Walden Lakes, which is shown and recognized by the land use designation of residential 6. To the south, you see another subdivision designated residential 4. It is also within the city limits, and these lots are a little bit smaller than a quarter acre. This is the proposed map now showing the site designated residential 6. It abuts, again, Walden Lakes to the north and south, and also anticipates being voluntarily annexed into Plant City. Currently, the site can be developed with up to 14 dwelling units and approximately 154,000 square feet of non-residential uses. If the amendment were approved, up to 85 units could potentially be considered, and again, the square footage would not change and would remain approximately 154,000 square feet. The proposed amendment will just basically result in the increase by 71 dwelling units, and the square footage for non-residential uses would not change. Staff reviewed this amendment for consistency with the Plant City Comprehensive Plan and found it consistent with the following policies in the future land use and housing element. Land use policies 1.1.3 and 1.3.1 under the residential development section encourages the provision of a variety of housing products and densities to meet the needs of various households and to allow for higher densities in proximity to commercial activity centers. The proposed amendment is consistent with these policies by increasing the allowable density on the site from 1 unit per acre to 6 units per acre, and thereby allowing a greater variety of housing types. In addition, the site is in near proximity to the Alexander Street Commercial Activity Center to the north of the site and the Gateway District to the east of the site. Both of these activity centers, the intent of them are to promote sustainable growth and mixed-use development. The amendment is consistent with the plan's annexation land use policies 2.7.1, 7.5.5, and housing policy 1.4.2, which encourages the logical and orderly growth and development through the coordination of annexation with public facilities planning and the timing and approval of new development based on the availability of public facilities. The site is compact and contiguous, abutting the city limits on 2 sides, and is directly adjacent to Walden Lakes, which is served by public facilities. Further, the Plant City Utilities Department has confirmed there is existing capacity for water and sewer to serve the site. And lastly, Land Use Policy 7.5, under the compatibility section, describes compatible growth as new development that is the same as or comparable to existing uses, and requiring that there is mitigation of potential adverse impacts through site plan design and buffering techniques. The proposed amendment request is for residential 6, which is the same designation as Walden Lakes, which it abuts to the north and east. The amendment would create a seamless expansion of the existing development pattern. Further, to ensure compatibility, buffering and screening regulations would be implemented at a rezoning and site planning stage to mitigate any negative impacts to the surrounding area. Based on these findings, Planning Commission staff recommends that the proposed map amendment, CPA 2411, be found consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Plant City Comprehensive Plan. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Does the applicant have a presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Executive Director, and General Counsel. My name is Tu Mai of HT Mai Inc. Office address is 14031 North Del Mabry Highway, Tampa, Florida 33618. I'm here representing the applicant who is here with me tonight. I do have a brief video to show the board of the current subject site. Thank you. Subject site is 14.2 acres and is located at the north side of Trapnell Road between Turkey Creek Road and Timberland Drive, immediately west of the Walden Lake development. The subject site is currently zoned AS1 with a future land use of designation Residential 1. The applicant is requesting to change the future land use designation from unincorporated Hillsborough County Res 1 to Plant City Res 6 to allow for a residential development. This application is submitted with an annexation petition, application number ANX 2024-15, to the City of Plant City, and the PD rezoning application number PB 2024-47. Staff has already provided a very thorough report. Therefore, I'm just going to briefly highlight to you tonight how this request is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Plant City Comprehensive Plan. Land Use Policy 1.13, Land Use Policy 1.3.1 for residential development encourages the development of a wide variety of housing types consistent with the housing needs, characteristics of the socioeconomic profiles of households. Land Use Policy 2.7.1 of community development, future growth, annexation speaks to the future annexation area that includes lands that may be considered to be part of Greater Plant City. Land Use Policy 7.4.3 and 7.4.5 of growth management redevelopment strategies speaks to the creation of like uses and creation of complementary uses. Objective 1.1 speaks to continuing to maintain adequate land designation for residential uses, which can accommodate the projected population and provide safety, decent, sanitary, and affordable housing opportunities for the citizens of Plant City. To conclude, we have demonstrated that this proposed amendment achieves the land use policies and objectives of the comprehensive plan. We received no objections from the review agencies. We concur with staff's recommendation of consistent with the Plant City Comprehensive Plan. We respectfully request the Planning Commission's recommendation of consistent and forward your recommendation to the Plant City Commission. Thank you to Planning Commission staff for their findings and recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now, we had a couple people sign up for the public comment on this one. I will start with those virtually. We had one individual, Alyssa G. Is Alyssa G on the line?
Yes, I am here.
You have 3 minutes, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Gerard. I want to just give a overview of our view of this project. My husband and I were drawn to Walden Lake and Plant City. The agricultural fields and slower pace of life were just what we were looking for. We purchased our house in 2023. The house and grounds needed significant attention, but the house abutting a strawberry field helped to seal the deal. It is a goal for us to establish our own land to work in harmony with the fields. We have planted many fruit trees and plan to create a pollinator garden within the next few weeks, not only to help our trees, but the field crops as well. The possibility of this plot of land no longer being zoned agriculturally hurts our hearts. I am curious to know if any other local farmers have inquired about this property. Does anybody know that?
This isn't a question and answer session. You can make your comments and move on.
Okay. Best case scenario, this parcel of land will stay zoned for agriculture, but if it must be developed, I implore you to stay with the current aesthetics of the surrounding homes. Do not allow multifamily units to be built in the single-family home area. The traffic that would increase on these narrow two-lane roads would be atrocious. The light at Trap Mill and Turkey Creek is already inadequate for the traffic we have. You would need to create turn lanes and delayed lights to make that intersection efficient. 14 single-family homes will continue with the aesthetics of this area much better than the 76 units mentioned here today. This is also helped to maintain the property value of the surrounding homes. Please ask yourself, why would Plant City want to eliminate what makes our town famous? Thank you. That concludes my thoughts.
Thank you. All right. We didn't have anyone else sign up virtually for Plant City, so I will kick it over to the one individual we have in person. I think it starts with a J, maybe? Or a D?
Excuse me? I'd like to speak.
Who is this?
This is Mike S.
Mike S?
And I thought when I logged on early, I automatically was put in the queue, so I apologize.
It's no problem. I'll let you go ahead and speak then, Mike. All right, you got 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Mike Skalitsky, and my wife, Janet, and I live in Walden Lake. We are in complete opposition to the proposed amendment to the Plant City Comprehensive Plan and future land use map for the parcel located at 3901 Shrapnel Road. We're also in opposition to any future zoning changes for the proposed site that would allow multi-unit or high-density housing. As you know, the Walden Lake development was initiated over 40 years ago, with various phases occurring at different times. The Silverstone development, which consists solely of single-family homes, occurred in the early 90s, and our home, which abuts 3901 Shrapnel Road, was built in 1993. One of the primary reasons we bought our home was the peaceful tranquility that we've experienced over the years sitting in our backyard. However, this tranquility is under threat of being destroyed by proposed amendment to the Plant City Comprehensive Plan and future land use map for this parcel. I realize private property owners have a right to sell their property and even secure rezoning as a contingency for the sale or enhance the value. However, they do not have a right to negatively impact the lives and well-being of their neighbors by doing so. Certain developments are just not appropriate for specific areas, and this is one of those developments. The Plant City area likes to promote itself as the strawberry capital of Florida, but increasingly, agricultural land is being lost to housing projects. Just because a parcel becomes available does not mean it should become high-density housing, especially if it's immediately adjacent to a single-family home neighborhood. The comprehensive plan and future use map were created to help guide community planners towards the best and highest purpose of the land use and help protect property values of taxpayers. They're also intended to prevent improper developments like the one proposed for 3901 Shrapnel Road. The Walden Lake complex contributes a substantial amount to the tax base of Plant City, and the value of our properties would be significantly diminished if the proposed changes were approved. Additionally, the quality of life of 14 to 16 homes immediately adjacent to 3901 Shrapnel Road would be significantly impacted due to the high density housing being in their backyards rather than a beautiful field of green. High density housing projects can positively impact certain areas. However, in this case, it would decrease the property values and negatively impact the quality of life for Silverstone and Walden Lake residents, which have been paying taxes for over 40 years. Another significant concern is Shrapnel Road. which is a narrow 2-lane road.
All right, sir, that's your time.
Already.
HTV, can you
Okay.
cut him? Thank you. All right, that's all we had sign up, hopefully, and not sign up on the virtual side. So I'll just throw it out to the room one time to see if anyone in the room had comments. Going once, sure.
Yes.
Come, please approach the mic and identify yourself, and then you can make your comments.
Yes. My name is Duc Lee. My house just next to that field, and I object to do they develop over there because I want the privacy, and we don't want to go to the city. And over there too much traffic. Every morning when we get out, we have to wait almost 5 minutes to get out from my house there. That's all.
All right, thank you.
Could you restate your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Duc, D-U-C, last name is L-Y.
Thank you. All right. So that is the public comment from the public. I will give the applicant a 3-minute period of response or rebuttal.
Tumai again for the record. Thank you to the residents that provided comments today. Certainly, we want to be good neighbors to the residents. However, based on their comments, I believe that they're more suited for the site development process, review process, and we respectfully request the board's determination whether this plan amendment is consistent or inconsistent with the Plant City Comprehensive Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Over to the commissioners. Conversation, discussions, questions. Commissioner Lauk.
That's a nice segue. Should we be looking at this through the Plant City Comprehensive Plan? Because it still sits in Hillsborough County.
Ms. Zornita.
So yes, because they have requested an annexation into the city of Plant City, that is a part of the process, that they request a land use category in the city of Plant City's comprehensive plan as part of that process.
Okay, because of the future land use, we're considering it as it is in Plant City's designation. We consider it under Plant City's purview.
Yes, as part of the annexation process, the city would then, they'll consider annexing it, and then they'll consider giving it a land use category in the city of Plant City.
Okay, excellent. I may have missed it. Could be complete user error, but when I looked through the packet, I didn't see any comment from Plant City other than the water department. I don't see anything from the staff, from a staff report. I'm sure I just missed it, but is it in there?
No, we did not receive a comment.
So we want to consider this under the Plant City Comprehensive Plan, but the Plant City did not comment on it other than the water department.
Often they comment at their planning board meeting and their city commission. Often they comment, but this time we did not receive a comment.
Okay. And question for staff can we equate what Res 6 would translate into from a Hillsborough County perspective? So what would the equivalent of Plant City Res 6 equate to in Hillsborough County? Because we're moving from a pretty very low intensive use to what I perceive to be a pretty high intense use. And frankly, I'm surprised staff has recommended that this for approval for this.
That's a great question. The counties would allow 6 units per acre. I believe it's residential 6 with the county, identical to Plant City's residential 6. Where it may differ is if they wanted a non-residential use and the locational criteria. And I would have to come back to you with that or ask county staff to speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ornita, you gonna hold your peace or?
Yeah, I would just say that, we were looking at the land use category in the city being comparable to what is to the north and the east within the city of Plant City. That area also is similarly residential 6.
All right. Any other questions or discussion items from the commissioners? Not seeing any. Going once, going twice. Commissioner Soria.
Just a question for the staff. Under the Plan City Comprehensive Plan, is there any mention of, because it's close to the city center, like protection of agricultural land is part of the comprehensive plan, or
Yes,
if you could highlight that?
There are policies that encourage the preservation of agricultural lands. There are competing interests. Because the site was adjacent to the city limits and adjacent to a built-out large planned residential development, it provided more guidance towards our recommendation than the agricultural policies because it's in an urbanizing area. What I did not mention is that Plant City has a vision map, and in that area, they envision that area, including in the county, in the future, being predominantly residential.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Are there any other comments, questions from the commissioners? Not seeing any at this time. I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment on this item and open it up to motions. Commissioner Kona?
Yep, motion to find PC CPA 2411 consistent with the Plant City Comprehensive Plan.
All right. Motion to consistency finding by Commissioner Kona. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Bowden. Are there any comments, questions, discussions from the commissioners before we take our vote? Would all signify their agreement by saying aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay. All right. I'm going to kick it over to the clerk for a roll call then, since we have a dispute here. So,
Bowden,
Yes.
Buzza, Cardenas, Kona,
Yes.
Kress, Linkus, Lauk, Saria,
No.
Sieben, Chair Joseph.
yes.
Motion carried 5-2.
All right. Thank you. All right. That was our last agenda item for that public hearing. So at 5:59 on the dot, I'm going to adjourn that public hearing and I will read us into our City of Tampa public hearing. If everybody will bear with me for just a moment. All right. Welcome everybody to the April 7th, 2025 public hearing on the Planning Commission on City of Tampa Comprehensive Plan Amendments. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation are encouraged. For those attending in person and wishing to speak on any agenda item, please sign the register at the rear of the room and turn off any devices that may be a distraction. To minimize feedback in the audio, all online participants in the meeting will be muted until it is their opportunity to speak. Planning commissioners should unmute themselves to indicate that they would like to speak. Please be sure to state your name at the beginning of your remarks for the benefit of the clerk. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments. When your name is called, you will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Please wait until the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and adhere to the time limits. If anyone has difficulties or is watching via HTV and would like to provide comments to be included in the record for the local government hearing, please email them to planner@plancom.org. For those of you who are not familiar with our process, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given the opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following presentations, members of the public may address the Planning Commission when recognized by the chairman. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal or response. The planning commissioners will then ask questions. Public comment will be closed. Then upon a motion, a second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. To all participants, please note that tonight's hearing concerns proposed changes to the comprehensive plan. Presentation should not include matters related to zoning applications and site plans that are not before the commission. Zoning conditions are not relevant to plan amendments and may not be considered by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's purview in making a recommendation is limited to consistency or inconsistency with the comprehensive plan. And with that, I'd like to ask the clerk to call roll.
Good evening. Bowden,
Here.
Buzza, Cardenas, Kona,
Here.
Kress, Linkus, Lauk,
Here.
Saria,
Here.
Sieben, Orton,
Here.
Rodriguez,
Here.
Chair Joseph.
Here.
You have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. All right, our first and only agenda item is 2A, TACPA 24-04, Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment, Tampa Future Land Use Section Update, and the presenter is Jennifer Malone, and the presenters are Jennifer Malone and Melissa Dickens.
Good evening, Commissioners. Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. This item is TACPA 24-04, the Tampa Comprehensive Plan Update Future Land Use Section. The project team is thrilled to bring this before you this evening. This is something that we have been working on in partnership with the City of Tampa, the community, numerous stakeholders and residents for a couple of years now. It's really been kind of an iterative process where we've heard the community and then we've come back with multiple rounds of drafts. Tonight I'm going to be covering the context and the sort of table setting for our approach and our process, how we got to where we are with the language. And then we'll turn it over to Jennifer Malone to go through the policy details. We also have a number of other members of the project team who are with us this evening who may help us answering questions. We really want to thank everyone from both our staff, the City of Tampa, as well as the community for their time and input over the course of this project. This presentation is probably going to be a little bit longer than a normal plan amendment presentation. There's quite a bit of detail in here, but we will want to make sure that we share all of it with you this evening. And the Future Land Use Section Update is part of the Live, Grow, Thrive 2045 Tampa Comprehensive Plan Update. We've been working on this in partnership with the City of Tampa for the past couple of years. You've seen a number of sections come before you. The Future Land Use Section is by far the largest section with the most policies. We have streamlined those a bit, but it is something that we've been working on in partnership. So a little bit about the community, where we are, and why we're doing what we're doing. Tampa currently has over 400,000 residents and is experiencing rapid growth. So by 2045, the projections show that we'll have over 74,000 more residents and approximately 113,000 new jobs. And we heard a few overarching themes from the community: prioritizing growth in the right areas, maintaining neighborhood character. We want to make our coastal areas more resilient and ensure sustainability. And then how can we create the plan to preserve the great things that everyone loves about Tampa while accommodating growth and ensuring there's sufficient housing? A little bit about our update approach. Again, starting with the vision back in 2022. That's something that came before this board in 2022 and was approved by, or recommended approval from the Planning Commission and adopted by Tampa City Council. And we always look to the vision, but in terms of the future land use section, this is the first time that there's been a wholesale review and revision to the future land use section since its creation in 1989. There have been updates in the past, but there hasn't been this level of looking at everything and looking at all of the details. And so this was a real opportunity for the project team to streamline, consolidate, and update the language. We also worked with a consultant, Pritchett Steinbeck Group, now 3TP Ventures, to provide outside expert recommendations on how we should approach the language. There are 3 different reports that are linked in your packet as background. I know that the consultant has been before this board a couple of times, but the reports, as a refresher, are linked in the packet. Again, we worked closely with city staff and stakeholders and then conducted outreach during multiple phases and after each iteration of the draft. So this is the Tampa Comprehensive Plan vision. Again, something that we look to as we update the different sections of the plan. There's a number of different components that are relevant to the future land use section, and I believe Jennifer is going to talk a little more in detail about how the updates relate to the vision themes. Ultimately, the goal is to make what we're developing consistent with this vision, because this is what the community shared with us that they would like to see in 2045. And our engagement process, as I mentioned, it's been iterative. There's been a lot of different meetings, listening sessions, planning for Tampa's Tomorrow town halls, different stakeholder group meetings and community meetings. We also tried to leverage technology throughout this process using interactive polling, project websites and social media posts, trying to reach the most people, and then created an interactive web map that we hope helped everyone understand the changes. We did receive a number of written comments throughout this process. Those are linked both on page 5 and also linked in attachment attachment F on page 341. And all in all, we have heard, we met with the community in about 30 different settings, 30 different meetings throughout the course of this process, and reached about 700 individuals during those meetings. And so here is a summary of what we heard from the community. The residents are primarily concerned with housing, that could be housing choices or housing options, transportation, and affordability. They also asked that the future land use section further address environmental concerns and coastal resiliency. There was support for flexibility for development, but also a need for clarity and certainty in the development process. We also got some feedback that the policies that we're developing need nuance for a city that's as diverse as Tampa and has such specific neighborhoods, and that the bonuses and the bonus structure should have clear criteria for implementation. And so I want to walk through the different ways that the comments shaped the final draft. We started with a draft in August of 2024 and received a great deal of feedback on that. So I'll just go over some of the high-level changes that that we made in response to the comments, and these are all also linked on page 5. We got some feedback about considering additional options for the efficient and resilient bonus, some suggestions about considering additional options for neighborhood commercial, some feedback for protecting the additional language to protect the environment, and also some comments that the mixed use requirement could be prohibitive. And we have worked reviewing each of the comments individually. We've made changes to additional certifications. We've expanded the locational criteria, reorganized commercial in context-sensitive neighborhoods. We've looked to see where we can add environmental components to the FLU, and also changed the mixed-use requirement to be a percentage of the ground floor instead of the entire building. We also received some feedback on heritage neighborhoods, which we've since changed to context-sensitive neighborhoods to clarify that intent. We also created some additional measures so that growth would be consistent with community context and added some additional criteria. There was some feedback about how can we enable more housing supply to increase affordability, so have a couple of components in the R10 and the TSD to address that. Received some comments on a number of different topics that we believe are handled best in other sections today, so we didn't make any substantive changes, but rather point to folks to the appropriate sections. Then we had some additional criteria, or some additional changes that we'd like to explore in future updates. We added some options for administrative review, added new language to explore a resiliency bonus in the coastal high hazard area. That was also the direction of this board. We have streamlined the policies and reduced the language. I believe we're going down from 20 goals to 7. And then we've incorporated, where feasible, the other technical suggestions on the policy. So we reviewed each comment individually and incorporated it where feasible. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Malone to walk through the substantive policy changes. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jennifer Malone with your Planning Commission staff. I'm going to lead us into the policy discussion. This is the section structure update. As Ms. Dickens pointed out, we have 7 goals, starting with citizen participation in the planning process. We thought it was really important to make this front and center because we all know how important that is to the process. Goal 2 relates to enhancing the urban form by directing growth to places through a bonus structure and our place types concept. Goal 3 establishes the future land use categories. Goal 4, not much has changed here related to MacDill Air Force Base and Tampa International Airport, but we do, and Port Tampa Bay, but we do have a new concept in this goal about the preservation of industrial lands. Goal 5 are urban design characteristics to enhance Tampa's character. Goal 6 is related to the city's historic resources, and Goal 7 is the coastal high hazard area policies and how we're going to effectively manage growth in those areas. Over the next couple slides, I'm going to be relating these big policy changes back to the vision themes that Melissa Dickens showed that graphic related to the vision a couple slides ago. So first, we're going to speak to land and public resources are used efficiently and infrastructure is reliable and connected. So the proposed future land use section seeks to further this theme by establishing 3 new place types in the future land use, which will direct growth to major activity centers and a mid-tier of growth to transit-ready corridors. The last place type, context-sensitive neighborhoods, are areas in the city that are experiencing the pressures of redevelopment and should retain their unique identity through some form-based code guidelines. And to incentivize growth in the regional activity centers and the transit-ready corridors, the future land use section proposes a new bonus structure that will incentivize higher density and intensity development in these areas, as well as 2 new bonuses separate from the place types for affordable housing and green development. We're also retaining the Seminole Heights node bonus and the Central Business District periphery bonus. So here's a graphic representation of the place types. Regional activity centers, this is downtown on the picture, but it's also the West Shore Business District and the Fowler Vision area, as well as transit supportive development areas, TSDAs, which is a fancy way of saying anywhere we might have fixed rail now or in the future. So the Ybor streetcar, a radius around that, would count towards TSDA bonus, and it's considered a regional activity center. Transit-ready corridors are corridors in the city that do have bus service currently, and it's a mid-tier bonus. We would like to also promote growth there, but the highest level would be in the regional activity centers. Finally, your context-sensitive neighborhoods, as I summarized on the last slide, are areas in the city that have a unique development pattern. They're experiencing those pressures of infill growth. They're typically before post-World War II, and we think that it's important that they're called out on the place types map, and it's important to retain that character. And here's the map, the place types map. You can see the regional activity centers in green and then red. Red signifies the Central Business District and the Central Business District periphery. Green is the West Shore Business District, the Fowler Vision area. Context-sensitive neighborhoods is purple. And then transit-ready corridors, which is our mid-tier place type, are the light blue. I'm going to pause here for a moment and let the commissioners and the audience take in this slide, but this is a really great example of how the bonuses are intended to be used. The structure is set up to really mix and match, and bonuses can be combined and stacked up to a bonus ceiling, but it's very important to point out a bonus may not go over that ceiling, as we see in Project C. This is also shown in Land Use Table 1 within your packet. There's also a prohibition on bonuses in the coastal high hazard area, unless the project is in a coastal development area, which we'll get to in later slides. The next theme, this is the same theme, we're just expanding on it, is we looked at simplifying our categories in the plan, and as well as refreshing the bonus options and maximums. So today, a great example is community mixed use 35 doesn't mean 35 units an acre. It means 30 units an acre and then 35 units an acre if the applicant enters into a bonus agreement with the city of Tampa. And this is the same structure for all of our mixed use categories and a lot of our residential categories as well. The proposal under this update is to retain the by right maximum today in the coastal high hazard area, but every other parcel in the city would be able to reach that 35 by right. And then there'd be an additional bonus option outside of the coastal high hazard area up to the 70 dwelling units an acre in that category. This is one example. We've made this change for all of the categories, and that is laid out in the packet. So the next theme is the community and its neighborhoods have unique identities that reflect the rich history and cultural diversity of Tampa. Planning Commission staff believes that this is being furthered by the context-sensitive neighborhoods concept. Future growth should really fit within that neighborhood concept. The Fowler Avenue vision recommendations are incorporated because we heard from the community when we did that Fowler Avenue visioning study, so it was really important that we bring those into the plan and adopt those policies. And Goal 6 is related to historic preservation, and so that was also be furthering this theme. The next theme, neighborhoods are complete with a variety of housing types. Yeah, am I out of time? Jobs within a walkable environment. This was a very hot topic with the community as well as with City Council whenever we were doing all of our outreach. The plan has locational criteria already, which seeks to direct any neighborhood serving commercial use to the right places to be compatible with residential development. Staff took a look at that criteria and in an effort to respond to this feedback decided to expand it where neighborhood commercial could be considered. So the expansion is that commercial neighborhood uses could be considered within the residential 10 category if the site fronts 2 collector roadways. So we're thinking about those corners in neighborhoods, a true neighborhood node, where you might have a lot of single family detached in your neighborhood, but you might want to walk to a commercial neighborhood use. And it happens to be at the corner of 2 collectors. Another way this is being furthered is we have a neighborhood mixed-use future land use categories, which are pretty underutilized in the city's plan. And so there's a recommendation to expand the utilization of those and also encouraging them along collector roadways. This furthers the same vision theme. And it's more criteria. The residential 10 category right now allows some limited townhomes and doesn't give a lot of direct guidance on where those should be located. So staff working closely with the planning department at the city put together this criteria for townhomes in the residential 10, also known as single family attached dwelling units. They should have frontage along a collector roadway classified as a collector or higher. They need to be adjacent to a site with a higher density future land use category, or they could be located within a transit ready corridor. So remember, the transit ready corridors is as our mid-tier growth place type. And so we think that having a variety of housing options in that area would be beneficial for the community. Okay, second to last theme we're covering is resiliency enables the community to recover from and mitigate the effects of climate change, extreme weather events, and coastal high hazards. As we know, this is really important to Tampa since we are surrounded by water. The future land use proposes to prohibit plan amendments in the coastal high hazard area that increase density and also will not allow on any bonuses in that area, as we touched on earlier. Today, there's a plan policy that just states there should be no net increase in residential in the coastal high hazard area. Planning Commission staff put this together, coordinating very closely with the city of Tampa because it's very direct and the prohibition is more straightforward. But I do really want to point out this doesn't mean a prohibition on development in the coastal high hazard area. There's still a lot of parcels that have a future land use category that could seek higher residential development than what's being utilized today. It would just need to go through a rezoning. This is only a prohibition on the plan amendments. The exceptions here are coastal development areas, lands designated as transitional use and general mixed use. Transitional use and general mixed use are categories we're trying to phase out because they're industrial and single family detached kind of all in one pod. And so if anybody seeks a plan amendment from those categories, they'd be limited to the next highest category, as well as publicly initiated amendments meeting the definition of overriding public interest. City Council is the determiner of who meets that of a project that meets that definition. There is a new future land use category being proposed, commercial restricted, which has no density entitlements, and so an applicant could request a commercial restricted future land use category in the coastal high hazard area, and it would be only commercial uses, so no density within that category. Here's the coastal development areas map. The coastal development areas are the community redevelopment areas in the city of Tampa. We did work closely putting that together. We're taking these areas into careful consideration. There's a policy also that states that these areas shall prioritize utilizing the funding sources for improvements to infrastructure to make these areas more resilient. There's also a sliver of land just north of McDill on the right side of the slide where we have these little pockets of light industrial. That's on the coastal development areas map because industrial is not very viable in this area. This road network is very limited. It is surrounded by single family detached. And if an applicant requests for an amendment here, they would be limited to residential 10. It's not that many parcels either. The last theme for discussion is regarding the economy. To further this, the future land use has proposed refinement of existing policy direction regarding industrial preservation. Some of you who have been on the board for a while know that this is a long time coming. The plan seeks to protect currently all industrial uses. And so when plan amendments would come in and staff was evaluating those, it was really kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. To help make this more clear, the Planning Commission and city staff evaluated all the industrial sites in the city and proposed a new industrial preservation map, which targets areas of industrial that should be preserved, and that is on this slide. Areas set aside for preservation on this map are near Tampa International Airport and within the Port Activity Center as well. You might notice that there is some industrial, the Tampa Industrial Park along Fowler Avenue. It was removed from the map because it has been designated as a regional activity center. It is located strategically to accommodate a lot of the city's growth, and that is really an area suited for transition to a mixed-use environment that includes university-supported uses such as housing and research. We did not receive any objections to this. There's also no formal comments from the City of Tampa in your packet, but that's because we worked so closely with them throughout the entire process, reviewing drafts back and forth, working as a team in some meeting rooms for a couple hours, a couple weeks. So that is why you might see that, and I know Evan Johnson is here as well in case you have any questions. And we do have to review this for consistency against the adopted future land use section. It's representative of a lot of our goals and policies summarized here related to growth and housing and our mixed use areas. And with that, we hope we're recommending consistency and that this recommendation is forwarded to Tampa City Council. I'm available for any questions.
All right, I'm assuming the city doesn't have a presentation? No, all right. We will kick it right on over to public comment. I will start off with first individual. We have one individual who signed up virtually, and that is Jarshikia Kowalowski. My apologies.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm Jarshika Kowalewski, resident of South Agandi, South Tampa. And so when it comes to the comprehensive plan, totally supportive of section 7.1.2 and 7.1.3. But when it comes to the potential language of land use 7.1.4 about exploring the feasibility of allowing future density bonuses, recommending a no vote or a strikeout or some type of clear definitive language, because in the spirit of no new density in the coastal high hazard, it makes no sense to add loose language or potential loopholes where developers will be able to continue to pile apartments all in the name of affordable housing that no one is asking for, at this point, at the detriment of the residents. Because there are plenty of areas that are prime for growth in Tampa, but a flood zone and evacuation zone shouldn't be one of them, especially for people who need affordable housing. It's difficult for them to evacuate anyway. But also the young lady pointed out a section just north of McDill where they're potentially looking at putting apartments. And I know this isn't a Q&A session, but maybe I can stay on for a point of contact at the end of this, because there is a developer that's planning to build apartments in that little slither that she pointed out. And I'm trying to understand, if city council voted no, how does developer leverage the state Live Local Act and then turning around and bringing density to to this area when it seems to be violating quite a few policies. So I know that no one will answer my question, but I'm hoping that I can at least get a point of contact to bring this issue up to someone who can actually do something about it if you guys are aware of it. And this particular area is 7400 Inner Bay Boulevard.
All right, were your comments over?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lornita, I think, is going to respond.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I have her contact information in the list here, and I will have with your email address, and I'll have staff get in touch with you about that.
All right. Next up, we have no more people online who signed up, so we have all people in person, and we will start off with Stephanie Pointer.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Pointer. I live south of Gandy in the coastal high hazard area. I'm sorry. Good evening. My name is Stephanie Pointer. Can we restart my time, please? I mean, if you can't hear me, you can't hear me.
All right.
Thank you. My name is Stephanie Pointer. I live in the coastal high hazard. I live right outside MacDill Air Force Base. And on November the 7th or November the 18th, Chair Joseph wanted clarity about what you guys should be doing with the coastal high hazard. It seemed like there was this and that, and he said he wanted to see a firewall, and it was indecisive. It was very, very hard to make decisions about the coastal high hazard because of what is in the current comp plan. Well, I would argue that the current comp plan was piecemealed together, much like the Land Development Code, with people who suggested, determined, demanded, recommended, whatever you want to call it. And if you don't believe me, look at the Rattlesnake Point section. Why one little peninsula in our giant city has its own section of the comp plan is beyond me. But the 2045 plan has 27 uses of the word CHHA. 26 of those are incoherent with one another. The one exception to that is 7.1.4. It's the one that I've stricken out on the handout that I've given you on the back page because it completely goes against every other use of the word CHHA in the comp plan. And this is one of the reasons why we have so many problems with making decisions about the coastal high hazard at this point. So please take that into consideration. It doesn't belong there. It looks like a turd in a punch bowl. In my handout, I've also included for you a list of the apartments that have been built south of Gandy, west of Dale Mabry, since 2016 when the last comprehensive plan was put together. It's 7,178 units. 7,178 units. You know how many we started with? About 10,000. So essentially, the number of dwelling units has doubled in our community. And if you want to know where to get the money for the infrastructure, this is a nifty little report right here. It's called the City of Tampa Mobility Fees. This is just one aspect of where our former mayor, Bob Buckhorn, refused to raise fees for infrastructure. He said it repeatedly in meetings. I've heard it from all kinds of upper level staff members. And on this sheet right here, you'll see that currently our impact fee is $1,700 for a single family home. But the county gets $9,100. And the rural county gets $13,000. So you want to know where we get the infrastructure should be coming from? It should be coming from the impact fees that are not being charged to developers who are getting Merry Christmas. We have water fees that haven't been changed in 40 years. I'm on the budget committee for the city. I've read every single page of the budget for the last 3 years.
Your time's up, Ms. Pointer. Thank you. Next up, Carol Ann Bennett.
And the city paid $500,000 for a study of the CHHA. Why don't you try reading it?
Hi, my name is Carol Ann Bennett. I only have 3 minutes. I could talk about a lot of sections of this, parts I like, parts I don't love, but I could live with, parts that are a problem. I'm going to focus on the parts that are a problem. 3.3.6 is to allow townhomes in R10. It says if it's a collector or an arterial road, or if it's next to a higher flue. Not in love with that. There's going to be resistance to that. But I think that that's a compromise that people can live with. But what people can't live with is that if it's located within a TRC boundary. The big problem with the TRCs is that it goes 660 feet in from the right-of-way. That means the outside of the sidewalks. That's more than a city block. That is going to get a lot of opposition, and I think the other two things are a nice compromise to allow more of it, but without going too far. 2.2.2, that's just a hard no. The problem with that is the TRCs, the bonuses are also 1/8 of a mile in. And my problem with that is south of I-275, you have the official evacuation routes for all of South Tampa, and Pinellas County comes through there, and MacDill Air Force Base. And by making that a TRC, you're allowing bonuses within that corridor that lives depend on being able to evacuate. Also, LU policy 4.2.9 in the comp plan says you must protect the access roads leading to and from the base with established national defense access roads and military evacuation route. It's a military evacuation route on Dale Mabry and some of these others south of I-275. So I also have a problem with the same thing. It's the bonuses in the transit ready corridors in that area. 5.1.7, there was some language in there that said clearly defined pedestrian pathway. I think that was very good proposed language. I think it was removed just to try to trim things up. I saw a lot of that in there, and most of that I agreed with, but this particular one I think has good meaning. I would like to see that added back, clearly defined pedestrian pathways. Then my last thing is what they talked about, the by right densities. I got two problems with it. You're giving by right density, you're increasing it to what previously required a bonus. That's just a free increase in density, and we're getting nothing. If you look at these bonuses, we've got some great bonuses that will really benefit the city. Is my time up?
That's your time.
Okay. No increase in by right bonuses. Thank you.
All right. Next up, Michael Marino, former Commissioner Marino.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. My name is Michael Marino. I'm the Executive Director of West Shore Alliance. I also want to thank staff for their work on this project. We've been working with staff going about 3 years now, specifically development in West Shore. And one of the things that we looked at when we looked at the comp plan is West Shore's relationship as a regional activity center and the coastal hazard area. So in the comp plan as proposed, it doesn't change anything about West Shore from a down zoning or down planning or downgrade scenario. But as you saw on one of the maps earlier, downtown has coastal development areas and West Shore does not. So the three regional activity centers, Fowler, downtown, West Shore is the only one that has a restriction from the coastal hazard area. So in the letter we provide to you and comments that we made to staff, we think that the comp plan as proposed actually allows for a scenario where West Shore can have coastal development area. So the first part is that In West Shore, the overlay of the airport flight path almost matches entirely the coastal high hazard area, the way it runs up to West Shore Boulevard and a little bit over to the east. So we already have that overlay from the airport. That's the most restrictive land use in the city of Tampa, because you're fighting against the FAA, you're fighting against the airport. You have to have that flight path there. So in a sense, in West Shore, you already have the most onerous restriction beyond the coastal high hazard area. The second part, what you saw with the past 2 hurricanes we had, the modern buildings in West Shore, especially the modern residential buildings in West Shore. I'm talking about the West Shore District, not south of Kennedy, but the West Shore District as it is in your map. They did not have issues with flooding. They did not have issues with storm because they were built to a modern standard. So there's policies in your plan that allow for this concept of allow the developer to be able to build to a modern standard, because that's what's going to get financed, that's what's going to get insurance going forward. It's not the rinky-dink stuff. Those types of buildings where the residentials maybe on the 2nd or 3rd floor can survive a major storm. And the final point we want to mention, as was mentioned by Ms. Malone's presentation, the CRAs are the ones that have those coastal development areas. West Shore does not have a CRA. However, again, in the policies, there's a scenario where they allow the public or the developer to provide a resiliency project at the public benefit. So we think those 3 things combined lead to the notion that West Shore can have a coastal development area, and that we, as an organization, we believe there needs to be sustainable growth policy along the coastline, and if those things combine, that can also match as part of your comp plan. So we think that there can be amendment to the comp plan while it continues forward consistent with West Shore as a coastal development area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Last but not least, we have H.V. Smith.
My name is Vance Smith. I live in the coastal high hazard area, and I'm here simply to discuss 7.14. And I agree with Chairman Joseph that this commission should encourage staff to come back with a better firewall on the exceptions to building in the coastal high hazard area. It's very loose. It's very similar to a theoretical planned unit development. Developer provides some idea of how it could be protected, and we wouldn't know that till the storm came or the flood didn't retain the waters. So please ask them to rework that particular section.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Ornita.
I just wanted to mention and pass out that we received a number of emails today and 2 that came in during the hearing. So I'm just going to pass those out. These were from the Tampa Builders Association, and then there were a couple others that were at your seat when you arrived.
All right, and I'll turn it back over to staff for response, comments, rebuttal.
Yeah, I can start out. Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. So we really appreciate the comments from the community. They have made some points over the course of this process. So the 7.1.4, that is something that came at the direction of this board. We did add it in to try to respond to a motion during a planning commission meeting last year. So that would be at your pleasure, how you would like to address that moving forward. With respect to the TRC bonuses, do want to clarify that there are no bonuses in the coastal high hazard area. So the map that was shown in the presentation shows the full extent of the TRCs, but there are no bonuses in areas that are in the coastal high hazard area. So just want to make sure that that point is clarified. And I think I'll turn it over to Ms. Malone for the other responses. Thanks.
Jennifer Malone, Planning Commission staff. My one response is Ms. Bennett pointed out the clearly defined pedestrian path. We had struck clearly defined from a policy regarding front door orientation, just to kind of clean up some language, but staff would be comfortable putting that back in the language after this hearing before it reaches City Council.
Thank you. All right.
And one other item, just wanted to thank Mr. Marino for his comments. We appreciate being able to work with the West Shore Alliance on this. We felt that the CRAs were the appropriate entity to make financial decisions about infrastructure spending, and so that is why we use that methodology to come up with the coastal development areas. We believe that really it is, this board's recommendation or Tampa City Council that would be the final decision maker in terms of how these dollars are spent, and so we look for your direction and input on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now over to the commissioners. And before I turn it over to the commissioners, I just wanted to clarify that I didn't say that staff should create a firewall to prevent development in the coastal high hazard area. I actually signed the letter that we sent to the city commission, the city of Tampa council, that said we should allow development in the coastal high hazard area if it's of a certain level of development. So I know I've been in the spotlight for the past month about what I say and what I didn't say. So I just want to clear that up there if there's any mysticism. So I'll turn it over to the commissioners now. Commissioner Seaman.
All right, I have a bunch, so sorry in advance for this. Okay, can we clarify if 3.3.4 states that mixed use can only utilize FAR if 60% of the project is non-residential?
Jennifer Malone, Planning Commission staff, clarify how.
Is it the case that these mixed-use developments listed in 3.3.4 can only utilize the floor area ratio if 60% of the project is non-residential?
That is the proposal.
It's 60% of the
Ground
floor.
Yes.
Is non-residential. So, and they can they can use the FAR for residential if 60% of the ground floor is non-residential. So
Okay.
it's just to establish a minimum amount of non-residential to ensure a vertically mixed use structure.
And what was the standard previously?
There is no standard, and we heard strongly from the community and city council that they would have liked that we needed to have a standard. Right now, I'll use my favorite category, community mixed use 35, as an example. It's a 1.0. There's a free bump to a 1.5 FAR,
Right.
but it has to have, 2 uses. And a lot of folks were putting a 900 square foot gym in and saying that was counted as the second use or something else. And we heard from the community that was not true mixed use project.
Understood.
Yeah.
The problem with, and I just think of, going through this, there might be issues with some of that just because the ground floor, if a lot of these more dense projects are going to be mostly parking potentially, and then when you go up and have structured parking, it makes it much more expensive. So this might actually end up limiting some commercial projects, commercial mixed-use projects that we might otherwise want. So that's just something to consider as far as that's concerned.
Absolutely. So it's not a requirement. It's only an option. So an applicant could still do a mixed-use project. We would just calculate their dwelling units and then make sure that there's no double dipping with their FAR and make sure that their commercial part is within that limit. Okay. Our consultant put together a study on this for us, a memo, which we did send out to the commissioners last week, and it's on our website where they looked at a couple communities around the country, and we felt that 60% was feasible. However, we did receive a lot of public comment about this as well, and your point is very well taken.
Okay. I have a few other things, but for what it's worth, we did get 2 letters here that said that there was commentary that would have liked to have been made, but they didn't have enough time to review this, and they're requesting that we postpone for 30 days. That's something we can consider. But I can continue with my comments if that's not something we want to talk about.
Yeah, sure. I don't see any lights right now, so.
Okay. Who determines the coastal high hazard area line? I know I've asked this question previously, but just for the board's reference.
Sean College, Planning Commission staff. The coastal hazard area is ultimately determined by the state of Florida Department of Emergency Management. When they contract typically locally with the Regional Planning Council in our area to do the analysis. And then as an agent of the Department of Emergency Management, they transmit that data to the State Department of Commerce, and at that point, it becomes a coastal high hazard area by law.
So it's not determined by FEMA or flood maps or anything like that?
No, it's modeled, it's a scientific model of basically the area that could be inundated during a storm surge event of a hurricane. So it's a scientific modeling process, and by state law, when that gets transmitted to the Department of Commerce by the Department of Emergency Management, it becomes the coastal high hazard area.
Okay. I thank thank you, Sean. I thank Mr. Marino for his comments. I did want to mention, I do think that the West Shore Marina District area should, if we're going to stick with no development should ever be proposed inside the coastal high hazard area line above the existing future land use, then I believe that we should have more carve-outs for it, like West Shore Marina District and the Macy's development that's currently on Gandy. I think probably if they were aware of this regulation, they might be here speaking to this somewhat, because I've been through development in the past, and sometimes you need to increase the density because these projects go on for years and years, and your financial feasibility changes over time due to macroeconomic considerations. So, and that Macy's development is in the coastal high hazard area. So at this time, if this passes, they will not be able to ask for an increase in density above the future land use that's existing presently. So my main concern about all this is just the broad brush that we're painting with by saying that you can't even request an increase in future land use. To me, this isn't, we should automatically be able to have all the density we want, or developers should be able to do whatever they want, and I appreciate that staff is in a difficult position because the current regulations say you're going to be denied if you make a request, but people still request, so it's kind of a pain in the butt. I understand that that's definitely a pain in the butt, but I think we need to consider the fact that developers can come in, they could have new ideas. We want them to be able to at least propose their ideas, because they might not be things that we are all thinking about right now, and they might be improvements to the community that we haven't considered. I know that there's a new provision in here that says that publicly initiated applications can come forward and be considered, but if a developer isn't, a billionaire who's going to have the time, financial resources, and feasibility studies to lobby city staff and city council in advance of this, then you're going to have to, which you would have to do in order to get a publicly initiated application, then it's going to deter smaller developers, maybe local developers, others from coming in and saying this could be something that city council would like to consider and might like to go against their own regulations to provide something new and different for the community. And so that's my concern about painting everything with a broad brush and not allowing those things to even come forward.
All right. Can we come back to you for the rest of them? Let's take a break for a second, because I hear Commissioner Lauck over here sighing extra heavy. So let's see what he has.
I'm not sighing. I'm joyful that someone hears to articulate my position so wonderfully, and I don't have to stumble through it. That was fantastic. I would have a question for staff on a follow-up standpoint. On the West Shore piece specifically, with the Regional Activity Center, why were they precluded or treated differently than the other development centers?
Okay, so I'll walk through, to answer that question and to help myself formulate a response, I'm going to walk through the regional activity centers briefly and describe how they're all different, and then I think we'll be able to arrive at a conclusion. Fowler Vision Area is not, there's no portion of the Fowler Vision Area, that's a regional activity center, that's within the coastal high hazard area. The downtown, the central business district, has unlimited density. There is no cap. That's actually very unusual, and I don't know many other communities in Florida have that same provision. Thank you, Danny. There is a map on the Elmo if anybody would like to look at it. The central business district periphery, portions of that are within the coastal high hazard area. That is a regional activity center too, but there would be no request for I apologize. Portions of the central business district periphery do overlap with CRAs and such, and so portions are within the coastal development area. And then we arrive at West Shore, which portions of it are within the coastal development area. Mr. Marino is correct. The land use for most of the West Shore Business District is regional mixed use 100. That is the second highest category in the city, right below the Central Business District periphery. It's 100 dwelling units an acre and a 3.5 FAR already. We have not seen developments in that area reach that potential that exists today. And it's only a portion of the district is in the coastal high hazard area. It's not the entire district. We did work with the West Shore Alliance when they brought forward some comments about their development of regional impact, their DRI, and we did make an amendment to the table in the plan so that way what their densities are today would be recognized, and there would be no changes there. I will also defer to Melissa Z to help answer
Well, I'll
the rest
just
of the question.
add on
Yeah.
to that I don't know if you have the coastal development areas map, Danny.
I could also pull it up in the PowerPoint if that's easier too.
Whichever's easier to do. But the methodology for carving out certain areas from the coastal high hazard area for consideration of allowance for plan amendments to increase density and for the density bonuses, which is the piece that West Shore as a regional activity center, or the portions of West Shore that are in the coastal high hazard area, is not eligible for. So the portions of West Shore that are in this lime green are not eligible for those two things. Plan amendments, which they may or may not need because they have such a high land use category, but they're not eligible for these density bonuses. That's really the big deal, is that they're density bonuses. And as Mr. Marino and I talked about a week or so ago, part of the business district is eligible for it, and then part of it isn't, and that poses a problem for them as they're marketing properties within the business district. I completely understand that. But the reason why we utilized the CRAs as the basis for carving out certain areas from the coastal high hazard area was because they have two things. They have a defined plan that identify a vision for redevelopment, which by and large, for all of these areas, call for higher density and intensity of development within these areas, and then along with it have tax increment financing and utilizing that funding for infrastructure. So they have the ability to target that funding for infrastructure toward within their geography. So whether that's within Ybor or within downtown or the West River area, whichever CRA it's in, they have the ability to target that and then target it towards infrastructure that supports resiliency or transportation to support evacuation. So there's a mechanism to begin to tie that increased density and development with some infrastructure support. And that is what we think needs to be linked to support having the increased development. That's what, quite frankly, the policy that you all talked about, or the motion that you all made in November, talking about exploring future density bonuses or plan amendment increases if a developer agrees to construct or invest in infrastructure improvements that will enhance the resiliency of the surrounding area, talked about was tying.
I think we were talking about flood walls and other mitigation tactics that could be incorporated and not effectively a ban on developing in these areas. That's my recollection. And really what I'm reading today is that, and what I've heard staff say is compare and contrast the Central Business District with the West Shore. And Mr. Marino also referenced the third area that has the same status as the Central Business District. I think it was around Fowler.
Right.
So can you talk about that area and why it has special
Well,
status versus the West Shore area?
The Fowler area is up by USF, and it is not anywhere near the coastal high hazard area. So it's, I mean, it is, each of the areas is around our major employment areas. They're areas where we want to focus growth for future employment and residential development. And so we're
As the comprehensive plan exists today, we have ample restrictions on the development community, and I know we're in somewhat of a conundrum where we say we're not going to look at cases, or you're always going to get an automatic recommendation for inconsistency when you come before the board, but the developer has the opportunity to bring that forward, and I wonder if we're addressing this in the wrong place in terms of just the overall architecture of our laws. Like the municipal code, the building code is really the right place to address this, similar to what Miami does. I mean, Commissioner Sieben made a comment 3 or 4 meetings ago, and you think about the high rises in Fort Lauderdale and Miami and all the various jurisdictions in that community, and a lot of that is done through their building code, right? Through like increased wind resistance, elevated foundations, V-zone construction, erosion-resistant foundations, seawalls. These are the items that maybe we should be exploring and looking at versus putting a complete moratorium, which is effectively what this is, on building in the coastal high hazard area, unless you're a public entity, which I don't think is equitable.
Your point is very well taken, sir. I kind of thought about a compromise as I was standing at the dais looking at this chart. The regional mixed use 100 category, which is a lot of West Shore, doesn't have a bonus today. There's no bonus in the regional mixed use 100. There's one proposed in this draft. But there are areas of West Shore that are urban mixed use 60 and community mixed use, which there's bonuses proposed here. So the board could, or the pleasure of this commission could consider which categories do receive a bonus in the West Shore area, if it is your pleasure. But I understand, and your point's well taken. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I think the bottom line for me, sorry, Melissa.
Oh, sure.
I agree some changes need to be made. I think we've indexed very far away from a neutral position is not the right terminology, but from a reasonable position on this.
All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner Lau. Back to you, Commissioner Sieben.
Hey. Okay, so I would agree. I think maybe this is something we should come back to, given the comments that we received tonight, and the fact that it seems like a couple of us feel strongly about these just blanket prohibitions. But I mean, in addition to that, there's some more nuances on here, or something that I had thought of is what happens if a transit corridor is also in a coastal high hazard area. So where we're proposing, and I'm assuming that means that if it's in the coastal high hazard area, you don't get the bonus. But that would negate all of Manhattan. If you look at the map, from Henderson all the way to the base, you're not going to get any bonuses on Manhattan because of that. So I understand where we're trying to give a little here and get a little there, but the unfortunate fact is that the coastal high hazard area is the majority of South Tampa, and we as a community have chosen to develop a lot of South Tampa. So it's not all homes, and I just worry about what happens if we sort of pigeonhole ourselves into not being able to respond as a community for decisions that we're making today. So I'll be done with the coastal high hazard area for now. If I can go back to 3.3.4, you had mentioned that mixed use can only utilize the FAR if 60% of the ground floor is non-residential. Were any of these zoning category or future land use categories previously allowed to utilize FAR, the ones in 3.1.2, I believe?
Yes, as long as they were not in the South Tampa and New Tampa planning districts.
Okay.
That there was a provision through text amendment a couple years ago that stated that any of the mixed use categories in those districts could only use FAR for residential density if it was 2 uses. It wasn't specific on the amount.
Okay, so now if they were any sort of mixed use previously in South Tampa or not, they could have utilized a second use and gotten a density bump. But now we're saying the only way they're going to be able to utilize FAR at all is if 60% of the ground floor is a second use.
For residential density, they can still utilize FAR for their commercial component.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. But previously they were allowed to utilize FAR.
Yes. In most of the city, and then in those two areas, they just had to have 2 uses to be able to do that.
This one feels maybe sort of restrictive as it relates to people who have already purchased property and invested in those parcels and everything, and were depending on using FAR previously. So that might just be something we want to consider. And then, sorry, go ahead.
I'll just respond quickly. The initial proposal, I think in the draft you all saw in September, was 10% of the project had to be a second use. Feedback from the community had us, we reconsidered that, talked to our consultant, and then that's where the 60% ground floor came from. But at the pleasure of this commission, that is something that, you all could change by motion. We did receive a lot of feedback on this specifically.
I understand, and I understand why community members want this to be the way that it is, and I understand why council wants it to be the way that it is. I just think from a developer standpoint and a practicality standpoint, things change over time. You can't predict today what you're going to need in order to make a project feasible and not sit there and be, an eyesore down the road. So I lean less towards to a lot of governance over what should go, what percentage it needs to be, and more toward, let the developer make a determination. But I realize that there should be some sort of minimum, so you kind of have to find an in-between. 60% feels like a lot. I don't know if 10% of the project is the right number, because if you have, say, a high-rise, 10% of the project is a lot. So, maybe it's 10% of the ground floor for a certain amount, or something like that for a certain amount of units, and then you have steps from there. Maybe that could be something that's considered. Just a thought on that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Danny Collins just reminded me that a consultant actually recommended 70% was more in line with their work.
Sure.
We felt that 60% was a good compromise, but we can certainly consider other options on this.
Okay. I have 2 more. Sorry, does anybody else have anything they want to say?
Oh, you can go ahead.
Okay. Can you explain the reduction in density for categories that are in the coastal high hazard area now?
Sure. So today, the adopted plan is, we'll use a different category for an example. I'll use residential 35. It's 30 units by right, up to 35 if the applicant enters into a bonus agreement with the city of Tampa. As part of this process, that is very confusing. Me and my staff and David Hay we do a lot of pre-meetings with applicants, and everybody wants to know how much density they can get. And it's always kind of shocking when you're not able to achieve what the category says it is. Through this process, the first proposal brought to City Council in the summer was to make the entire city have that, the maximum would be the maximum in the category description, right? At that workshop, there was some public comment that had staff come back to the drawing board and reconsider making that citywide. So the compromise was that within the coastal high hazard area, it would be like 30 dwelling units an acre, and that's the maximum. And then outside of the coastal high hazard area, the maximum would be 35.
So just to clarify, so we're talking about CMU 35 for an example right now, right? So whereas you think that you can get 35 units to the acre, and right now in the city of Tampa, I think it's very confusing, and there's some calculation you have to do to actually get to 35, but you can, through a combination of things, get to 35 theoretically.
Right. But in that category, everybody uses the FAR anyway,
right,
to calculate the residential density.
But so the proposal now is if you're in CMU 35 in the coastal high hazard, you can only get to 30, and then various other categories are. So effectively, to me, it seems like we're limiting further beyond what our future land use plan had anticipated what density can be in the coastal high hazard area.
Jennifer was very kind in how she framed that, but I want to be clear, at that workshop, the direction came very clearly from City Council that they did not like how we were giving away density by increasing the density, particularly in the coastal high hazard area. They asked us specifically to work with city legal to see how we could keep things at the 30, to use that category as an example, because we had concerns about reducing, and city legal conclusion was that 30 was what people were entitled to. They were not entitled to the 35 in the CMU category because that is only allowed by a bonus agreement. That is not what they are entitled to. I may not be using the right legal jargon, but that is not their what their the by right land use is. The by right is 30. So so that was city legal's advice that was the maximum of the land use category was 30. So we said, okay, we'll keep it at 30 for the coastal high hazard area. We still believe in our recommendation to increase it for the rest of the city to the 35. But that direction really largely came from City Council.
Right. And if an applicant in that category does a mixed-use project, provides the 30% ground floor, 60% ground floor, second use, the dwelling unit count could be higher than even 35 dwelling units an acre by utilizing the FAR if it's a mixed-use project.
Even if it's in the coastal high hazard?
Even if it's in the coastal high hazard area, yes.
Okay, so my concern, role play with me, okay? I own a parcel that's future land use CMU 35. I bought it 10 years ago. I realized that you need a density, you need some sort of bonus agreement, which you can get in the city if you pay, I think it's $50,000 or something for a certain amount. There's a calculation that they do.
Yeah, based on a number of factors like land cost and land value and all of that. Yeah.
So I bought a piece of land 10 years ago, assuming that I could get 35 units to the acre if I were to, engage with this agreement with the city. And so now we're going in and saying, if you are in a coastal high hazard area, you cannot get 35 units to the acre unless you make 60% of the ground floor a second use?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that clear. It's a possibility that your development could end up exceeding the 35 dwelling units an acre because you can usually put a lot more units in when utilizing the FAR instead of residential density.
But say I can't, it's infeasible for me to use FAR or put 60% ground floor retail or whatever, then my density is capped now at 30 units per acre.
That is correct.
Okay. I don't love that one, so.
All right. You have any more? Can I jump?
No, go ahead.
Let me jump in real quick. All right. I just want to jump in because I just want to say that I agree kind of with these two. I knew these two were going to be where they are, but everything I'm hearing kind of rings true, and I would agree with a lot of the things you're saying, a lot of things Mr. Marino said, and I mentioned a lot of this when we did our briefing. I did also want to mention, just to put it out there, that if we aren't going to vote with staff, if we are going to go against staff, we're going to need some policies and some things to make motions and vote on. So I just wanted people thinking about those things. So, Ms. Ornita, I see you have something.
Well, yeah, I would just like to say, I mean, this is the update of the Tampa future land use section, and I don't think anybody on my team would like that to be found inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. That's not a place where we would like to be. So I would, if that's the direction that you all are going, I would love to get feedback from you all on what you would like to see changed, and have maybe some additional time to bring back something different to you all. I do want to emphasize, as it relates to the coastal high hazard area, I hear you all very loud and clear, and certainly it is not. that has been probably the one issue that we have heard the loudest, also from the community and from the city council about also. So it has been something that I think your staff has tried very hard to balance a lot of different stakeholders on. And, doesn't seem like maybe we've gotten the balance to where you all are satisfied. But certainly we'd welcome your direction and another opportunity to bring something back rather than an inconsistency finding. So thank you.
I'm going to kick it over to Commissioner Cone.
Yeah, thank you. And just a couple of comments from my perspective. I agree. I think Commissioner Sieben laid out some of the holes and challenges that I think we all kind of have the same problems with. I would like to make mention, too, that I could tell initially by how long it took to present this, which I think we should be mindful of the 15 minutes because we hold everyone else accountable for that time as well. I do think there's a lot of holes in this. I don't think it's ready for prime time. And if the chair will allow it, I would like to do a motion to table to another time that staff feels necessary to bring this back.
Well, I don't think we table it. We don't want to table things because administratively that's a bit tricky. We'd probably want to give them a continuance.
Yes, I would recommend a continuance.
A motion of a continuance.
Before that motion, can I make a comment?
All right. Yeah. Well, it's to the floor anyway, but you can go ahead and make your comment.
Thank you. I appreciate your feedback and the response to some of the feedback that you've gotten tonight a lot. And I know it's a tough one to nail down. I would say with respect to the community, there's two things. One, we don't want a tyranny of the majority or tyranny of the minority, which is typically what we get when we get feedback from the community because it's usually a small pocket of the same residents again and again. As an example, the two residents that spoke tonight both live in the coastal high hazard area, but they don't want anyone else to live there. And second, as it relates specific to city council, we are not their water carrier. We are a recommending body. Some of us are appointed by them, some of us are not, but it's our fiduciary obligation to make a recommendation to them not to do their bidding. So frankly, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but I don't typically care what they want. I care about doing the right thing for the community and as I see it and advocating for it. And sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. But at the end of the day, just because a publicly elected official wants something from this body doesn't mean we're going to give it to them.
All good comments. All good comments. And I'm going to hold that motion until we get to the motion section, but I'll come back to you first, sir. Yes, Commissioner Sieben.
Okay, can I just have, well, I had one more thing, but I can speak with Mr. Anita about it later. But I did also just want to say, I sympathize with the neighbors. I think we're all worried about flooding. I think we will all want sophisticated and advanced development and responsible development and, that considers drainage with great civil engineers. I think we all want the same thing, but I think we all need to be cognizant of the fact that Tampa is still a growing city. We do want new businesses to come here. We do want people from different communities to move here. I mean, that's what keeps us growing and thriving. And so in order to do that, we need to balance the needs of the community with the needs of the future. And I think that's what the Planning Commission does. And so I think there's a minority on both sides. There's not a whole lot of developers who can speak to exactly how that works, but but there are a lot of concerned neighbors, and we completely understand that. But I think we're all just trying to do the responsible thing.
Very well said. Commissioner Kress, I see you moving.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to commend staff and Melissa and your whole team. This has been a journey, and I think that you have a really fair compromise here. I don't know that you'll ever come up with language that's going to appease everybody. I don't have real strong feelings about the coastal high hazard area. I think you all are making pretty valid points. I do sympathize with the West Shore Alliance's concerns, competitive disadvantage maybe that you're pointing out. I hadn't heard the transit-ready corridors come up tonight, and I just wanted to, I really took a look at that section in specific. I know there were some public comments against it, but we can't talk about land use without talking about transportation. We all know that, and I think in this case that staff got it right, and I hope that my fellow commissioners will really support that section.
Good comments. I agree with you on that. There were a lot of good points besides the transit-ready corridors. There was some talk about buses. There was a lot of good talk about permeable pavements, a lot of good environmental stuff that I saw in there. So I was kind of either or on this one because there's a lot of good stuff in there too. And I want to commend staff, and I did also in our private briefings commend staff for the work they did. I think there's a lot of really good stuff in here. And anytime we're dealing with the city of Tampa, it's always hard to strike that balance. So kudos to staff. Don't hang your heads. This is, tough business here. So I think you all did a very good job. And I did want to call Mr. Johnson up here because you're sitting there quite comfortably. So I wanted to get your thoughts on all this just to see, because there were no comments included. Understandable. You all met, camped out together and all that. But how do you, as representatives of the city, feel about the work that staff brought here now?
Oh, goodness, that's a big question. Well, first of all, I did want to mention, we have been working, Evan Johnson, City of Tampa. We have been working with staff for years now, 2.5 years, certainly since I've been with the city. And I think she mentioned earlier about weeks working together in rooms. It really wasn't hours. So this has been a very collaborative process throughout. I think generally what we got here is what we would like to see as city staff. It's been internally vetted by all of us and all of our departments and legal and all of that. So we feel pretty comfortable with it, and we're ready to move forward with it. So wasn't surprised necessarily by the comments that we've received about the coastal high hazard area. I think that I think everything that we've worked on is a balance. I think on average, if you look at CMU 35 outside of the coastal high hazard area, we just increased your density by 17% from the beginning. If you UMU, 20%. So we did that in exchange for also realizing that we have very vulnerable areas that we want to keep, try to somehow control growth, the additional growth, particularly as it relates to large plan amendments and things like that. So I think it was a balance. I think the bonuses point to that balance as well. On the one hand, maybe we are offering significantly higher bonuses and possibility and potential in those bonus areas than we do now within the comp plan. So, we put a lot of work in, and I think we'll continue to put work in. But one more thing I wanted to mention that, there was a lot of talk about growth in South Tampa, and I think that South Tampa's been growing. It's been the fastest growing part of the city for some time. And even YASERT's projections from Plan Hillsborough in the coastal high hazard area, we're still expecting 17,000 new residents in the next 30 years, 24% growth, and that's with the current future land use categories. That is with no amendments. That is what is assumed now. So it is already projected and assumed to be growing, and we will be planning for transportation improvements and all of that around those numbers. But there's already a lot of growth coming to the coastal high hazard area, and maybe it's a little less than it's been in there in the past, but we have a lot of entitlement there, and it just isn't used yet. So those are my comments.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Are there any other? Commissioner Kress?
Yeah, I'll echo what Mr. Johnson said, and I think Melissa Z said it earlier too, is that we're not building to what we're currently allowing people to build to. So maybe this isn't quite as big of an issue as maybe we think it would be.
All right. Commissioner Sieben?
I said I wasn't going to say it here, but I might as well since we're all sitting here anyway. I think 3.3.6 might need to be rewritten a little bit as written. It's very subjective, and it suggests you can't have duplexes or townhomes in an R10 future land use category if it's not on a collector roadway. And I think that there are a lot of R10 future land use categories that are not presently on a collector roadway. It's a little confusing the way it's written, but also I think subset C is pretty subjective. And then my other question is, what if this project is adjacent to another R10 parcel that's already a townhome community? Then this provision wouldn't apply because it says that in order to pass, it needs to be next to a future land use designation that has higher density or intensity. So those are my concerns with that one.
Staff looks like they're rushing to.
Jennifer Mullen, Planning Commission staff. I'm going to turn this over. This requires a lot of more institutional knowledge than I have.
think we're talking about the R10. Again, David Hay, Planning Commission staff. Currently, duplexes and townhomes are not permitted in R10. There's only been a very limited exception of, there's an interpretation basically that you need to be next to commercial, that there have been some instances where they've had the density to allow it, but it's not a use by right within the R10.
It's not a use by right, Jennifer Malone, Planning Commission. David educated me on the interpretation about being next to commercial. That predates us. But then the interpretation had been expanded too, because collectors are the edge of a neighborhood, and the current policy states that these could be on the periphery of a neighborhood. Collector roadways is where we want to increase our housing options. And so the point of this policy as written was to codify these long-standing interpretations while also increasing a variety of housing options and not limiting to the residential 10 to only single-family detached.
Okay. We can talk about it offline, but I feel like I could give you a few examples of townhome communities that are in R10 right now. And again, maybe they apply to those specific situations, but.
Yeah, I'd love to see those.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Commissioner Soria, did you have? I saw you moving.
I just wanted to make a comment saying the 300 odd pages, it was a lot of reading, but a lot of good work in there. And all of Tampa is not, coastal high hazard area is not a big part of Tampa. Tampa includes a lot of other things as well. So we have to look at the comprehensive plan as a big picture as well. And a couple of words might seem difficult to understand, but again, it's also makes it open-ended when it comes to coastal high hazard area. I remember talking to Commissioner Rodriguez. MacDill is one of the Air Force bases that's surrounded by coastal high hazard in all areas, but they come up with plans that makes them resilient to those things. Same thing, we have to look at our citizens. Even though we want to have people live in those areas, it's important to make those areas resilient. If we do that, it's not necessarily civil engineering. It also comes down to emergency services and things like that. So if we have developers taking part of that because they are the one getting the benefit out of it, I think it's a good thing to do that. And at the same time, it's a plan that can be amended, can be changed. So definitely something to not to put a stop on, but to continue with it and work through with everybody as we continue with the process. 40 years, things change. Next 5 years, things could be very different given how the government might work out. Big hurricane comes in, nobody would want to live in the coastal high hazard. So things will change, so it's something we can adapt and move on. So I think staff did a good work, and I'm in all support of the policy.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Ornita, I see you moving.
Well, I wanted to, before we move to motions, see if I could recap what I've written down as things that you all have brought up for us to respond to and see if I've gotten them right. Okay, so I have policy 3.3.4 about the 60% of on the first floor, looking at that. I have 3.3.6 about the townhomes on the and duplexes. And then I have the policies about the coastal high hazard area and the prohibition on plan amendments in the coastal high hazard area. That's 7.1.2. I have looking at the, I'm interpreting here, so tell me if I've gone too far. Looking at the addition of West Shore as a coastal development area. And then looking at the issue of the TRCs in the coastal high hazard area and the eligibility of bonuses along those corridors in the coastal high hazard area. That's what I wrote down. So any other issues?
Commissioner Sieben has her light on.
I would say if you're going to look at West Shore, maybe also look at Macy's. I don't know who the developer is. The Macy's redevelopment on Gandy is probably a big one because I think a lot of people probably wouldn't consider that having been in the coastal high hazard area. And then also, I would say just the general thought process behind reduce, like we use the CMU 35, for example, of not being able to actually get to 35 units per acre for, you know, maybe there's a special carve out for people who have owned their land previously to this. You know, I'm not sure how that would go over, but just something to consider.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Bowden.
Excuse me. I want to commend the staff for, you know, the update of the comp plan, especially since we started having this conversation when I first came on. I have a better understanding of the coastal high hazard area. But I keep hearing one thing is that the coastal high hazard area has not been fully developed. So we're talking about some, you know, it's sort of a, and I know we have to plan it in advance, but it's sort of like, is it the cart before the horse? Because to me personally, I don't know exactly how much is left to be developed. So the thing is that, you know, maybe if we had a handle on the potential, then we could maybe look at, you know, what is the right number to utilize? Because now we have an abstract number over here, but we want to set a value over here without even understanding what the you know, if there is a value over here at all. I think that getting a better handle on what the underuse is, and then working some type of variable or number, exactly how you would do that.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ornita just took that down. It's a very good point. All right. Any more comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Kress, I see
Well,
moving.
regarding Commissioner Kona's potential motion.
I haven't made anything yet.
Okay, but so can you talk about your timeline and what's going to really throw a big wrench into it?
Well, so we right now have a date with City Council for transmittal of May 22nd. So I think we'd like to attempt to come back to you all May 12th. So if we could do a continuance to May 12th. If we don't feel like we have things ready that quickly, we'll ask for another continuance and we'll continue out the Tampa City Council date. But I think that's what we'd like to try to do first,
All right.
if we can.
Commissioner Surya.
Just as a comment, if we do continue, and would it be just the points that are dotted down, or we'll have to go through an entire thing again?
Well, we probably won't make that entire presentation again. We'll be responsive to the points that we just talked about. But the public hearing, people will be able to talk about anything in the package.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
And if you have any questions or comments that you want to give to staff along the way, definitely reach out and you can set something up and talk to them and have them focus on whatever you want to look at. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Kress? Comment?
I would make a motion when we're
Oh,
ready.
wait, hang on then. All right. Any more comments or questions before I close the public comment? Going once, going twice. Public comment is closed. I'll open it up to motions from the commissioners.
Okay.
Commissioner Kress.
In an effort to potentially avoid a continuance, I will go ahead and make a motion that it be the future land use update is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Did I say that correctly?
Okay. Motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Kress.
I'll second the motion.
All right, there's a second out there, Commissioner Surya. Motion of consistency finding by Commissioner Kress, second by Commissioner Surya. I can tell we're not all going to agree, so let's just take it right to the roll call vote.
Bowden,
No.
Kona,
No.
Kress,
Yes.
Lauk,
No.
Surya,
Yes.
Sieben, Chair Joseph.
No.
It was worth a try.
Motion failed, 2-5.
All right, let's reopen it up again. Back for motions. Anyone out there?
I'll make a motion for a continuance until, what did you say the date was?
May 12th.
May 12th.
All right, motion of for a continuance to May 12th. Is there, Commissioner Lauk?
Second.
All right, a second to that motion for a continuance to May 12th. Are there any questions? I guess we should do a roll call on this one too, because there might be some disagreement on this one too. So I'll send it over for a roll call.
Bowden,
Yes.
Kona,
Yes.
Kress, Lauk,
Yes.
Saria,
Yes.
Sieben, Chair Joseph.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Wow. Booyah. All right. And with that, have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At 7:31, this meeting is adjourned.